guilty of involuntary manslaughter. Now, right around 1:20 this afternoon, the jury sent a question to the judge asking about Penal Code Section 12022.5. The question says the allegation is, did the defendant personally use a firearm during the commission of a crime? The judge answered that question. The jury then found Messerly responsible, or at least guilty, of using his firearm during the commission of a crime. Effectively, that ratchets up the level of punishment. Now, I can tell you that Messerly was immediately taken into custody. He was handcuffed by sheriff's deputies and taken away. Now, his attorney, Michael Raines, argued that he had participated through all of the court proceedings through the past 18 months, that he had posted a substantial bail, and that he should be released on his own recognizance. The judge disagreed with that and again immediately placed him in custody. Now, Oscar Grant's family was largely stoic through the reading of this trial. Messerly's mother began to silently weep, and so did his sister. It seemed that none of them expected that he would be placed in cuffs and taken away. Now, the jury was polled, and all 12 jurors stated that this was a unanimous verdict, that they all voted guilty of voluntary manslaughter. Now, the judge said and agreed that this was an exceedingly well-tried case by the attorneys. And as you can see, there's a large contingency of Los Angeles police officers speeding by the courthouse at this hour. It is unclear if they have any role of what's happening inside the courthouse, but I can also tell you there are two other high-profile cases being held here today. But again, in the case of the People versus Johannes Messerly, he has been found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. Alan?
Yeah, Robert, I'm just curious. You mentioned that Oscar Grant's family in court when the verdict was read was stoic. We've seen so much emotion from them during the 3-week trial, and deservedly so. It's a very emotional situation. But since you've been down, I know you just rushed down, but have we heard from them across from where you are? It looked like one of the family members was speaking.
We have yet to hear from the family, and I'm going to just take a glance over at the crowd. There has not been a family member who has come down from the 9th floor. This is where this trial has been held for the past 3.5 weeks. No one has come down yet. There have been a large group of both protesters and supporters. I guess the phrase might be used loosely to describe both, but they have been here at the courthouse throughout the day. They were also here on Tuesday and kind of continued their campaign. Many of them were expressing anger that they felt that the justice system did not serve Oscar Grant, that a guilty verdict of involuntary manslaughter simply did not suffice for what they said was videotaped and what they say the type of crime is. We're going to slightly pan away. There is a huge contingency of media here, both from the Bay Area and from Los Angeles. As you can see, there are also national networks who have gathered here for a press conference that was set to begin. If our cameras can slightly begin to pan back over to the microphone, the person approaching the mic right now is the public information officer for the courthouse. He has been given the updates throughout the day. Now, at this point, I cannot hear exactly what information he is providing, but he has come downstairs. He very well may be reading the jury instructions or the instruction sheet that was provided to them. There have been many questions about the Penal Code Section 12022.5, and that seems to have generated the most attention since we learned that this verdict was reached. Now, again, deliberations were just 4 hours today. The jury started at 8:45 this morning. They took a lunch break at 11:45. They returned at 1:10, and it was at 1:20 that they pitched the question to the judge about whether they can consider whether he uses firearm during the commission of a crime, and it appears that just 1 hour later they had reached their verdict. So total time of deliberation, including yesterday, has been just 6.5 hours in reaching this guilty verdict of involuntary manslaughter.
And Robert, where do we go from here as far as sentencing? Did the judge set the next court date?
It is very interesting. The judge has set the date as August 6th, where they will hear further proceedings and motions on the matter and even address sentencing. Now, Michael Raines initially asked for just 2 weeks to present those motions and his recommendation on sentencing. The judge replied that he was willing to give Raines up to 2 months. They conceded and agreed that August 6th would be when they would return back here to the courthouse for sentencing.
Right now, Robert, we're seeing some, you are live, we're seeing some other video behind behind you of Messerly in court when he was in shackles and he was in the court or in the jail uniform. But he has been out on $3 million bail, but you're saying today they took him off handcuffed.
Absolutely. The judge recognized that he had posted this $3 million bail, and the judge even said in open court he had taken it into consideration that such a substantial amount had been posted, but he said even with his consideration, he still felt that the defendant, Johannes Messerly, should be taken into custody. And in fact, again, he was taken away at right around 4:07 this afternoon. So he has been removed from the courthouse. The jury was excused from the courtroom as well. Now, we have made several attempts to try and talk with the jury, but the court has told us that due to the large amount of media scrutiny on this case, they feared for the safety of the jurors. So the jurors have been removed from the courtroom by a separate exit. They have been told to drive home, and in turn, they have also been told not to answer any questions by the media.
Well, there has been a gag order in place this whole time, so I assume that's not lifted yet.
Well, at this point, the judge did not make a statement on the gag order in court today. However, last week during proceedings, he did say that he would lift that gag order once a verdict was entered. Now, we do know that Michael Raines was, of course, in court. He was expected to have given a statement. That has yet to happen at this hour. The Alameda County District Attorney's Office had instructed David Stein and his second chair that they were not to speak to the media here in Los Angeles, that a statement would be made in Oakland about the verdict. We're certainly awaiting their response on the verdict here in Los Angeles.
And with the verdict not taking very long, only 6.5 hours, was there family reaction from the Messerly family or Oscar Grant's family in terms of how quickly the jury came back with a verdict?
You know what? Throughout this trial, they have not spoken to the media whatsoever. They silently filed into the courtroom just about 10 minutes before the verdict was read at 4 p.m. First, his mother, Agatha, then followed by his sister, and then two other individuals came into the court. We believe that it's Messerly's father. Now, the man who was sitting on the bench with the Messerly family openly wept as that verdict was read. Now, his mother, again, was fairly stoic when the first not guilty verdict came in, or not guilty decision on murder 2. When it got to involuntary manslaughter, you could begin to see her welling up with tears, but she certainly allowed those tears to flow once he was shackled and taken into custody.